Hi, Lee here. If you remember last video, I finally finished the body off, almost finished the body off. It's oiled, it's been waxed on the top, it's nice and shiny, it's looking really good, so I'm pleased with that. That's come out, worked out nicely for me. The next job I need to do is, for this video, I'm probably going to end up finishing this guitar now, but the next job is to put the controls through the top. So I've got the metal plate that came with the controls. I just bought some already soldered controls because it's a lot easier. They're quite cheap. I didn't want to do all the soldering myself for this build. But what I've done is I've taken the controls off. Obviously I don't need the plate. I'm just using the plate for measurements. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to drill the very first hole through the back for one of the screws for the pickup selector. And then once that's come through, I know exactly where to measure on the top, so I can put the holes in from the front instead, so everything looks neat and tidy and it's all measured up. So let's get on and do that now. The first thing I need to decide is if I'm going to keep the traditional pickup selector switch position, which traditionally on Telecasters is at the front, but I'm quite a fan of the mod, where you swap it round and you move the volume to there, the tone there, and leave the pickup selector at the back. Now what I think I'm going to do, because obviously on a normal Telecaster when you use a control plate you can easily do the mod by taking the plate out, moving the knobs around and turning it round and putting it back in. Obviously with this one it's a one-shot deal because I'm actually mounting them directly to the top, so I can only ever screw and cut once. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm actually going to keep this guitar traditional. I'm going to keep the pickup selector at the front and just with the volume and the tone at the back. I keep it traditional and we'll go from there. What that means is I need to put the very first pickup selector switch screw, that's the one I'm going to drill first because that's the furthest one to the side. So I'm going to drill through the back for that, and then I'm going to turn the guitar over and use this plate as a template, and then drill through the front for the slots, the other screw, and the two control knobs. So let's get on and start the first drilling, and then we'll measure up. So the first problem I've come across, obviously the pickup selector switch, the screws that hold that in are really short because obviously the thickness of the plate is quite thin. Now my top is 5mm, which is the length of the screw. So of course if I use the original screw for the pickup selector, it doesn't actually go all the way through the top, so I can't use that. Luckily though, because I've built a few guitars now and I've got a few bags of screws everywhere, they're all pretty much standard size. What I've actually done is I've found a longer screw I can use that will go much further through, and this does fit into the pickup selector screw hole. So it's a bit of luck. I've found two matching screws which are much longer. These will go all the way through the body and there's enough thread to be able to connect to the pickup selector. So I've found those. Now I'll measure up and I'll put the rest of the holes in for the selectors. I've also found the shaft for the volume and tone knobs is not long enough. I thought it was, I'd measured it, but when I tried to put the nuts on the other side, it was just a bit too tight. So what I've done is I've actually hollowed out a bit of the top inside there, and now when I put the shaft for the pot through, there's enough to screw it on behind. So that all looks good now. The next step is starting to assemble the guitar, putting it all together. So let's start that now. I almost forgot about the bridge earth, so I'm just feeding the wire back through, and I'll put it underneath the bridge somewhere just before I screw it all down. So let's get that done properly. So the next job now is just to solder the electronics on. So the pickups to the selector switch and the earth to the back of the volume pot. So let's carry on and do that. So I've put the electrics in, but I've got a bit of an earth problem, so I'm going to try and work that out later. I've already re-soldered lots of times to try and make sure everything's done. So I'm starting to think there might be an issue with the switch. So I suppose my advice would be, don't buy cheap. Buy the more expensive, better quality electronics. So if I can't resolve the earth issue, I'm just going to order another wiring kit for this. And put a better quality one in. I just got a cheap one just to get it up and running, but there is a slight buzz and I can't seem to remove it. Anyway, the next step is to put the neck on, put the machine heads in and string it up. So let's do that now. Well, that's it, it's about complete now. The last thing to do is I'm just going to do some intonation adjustments with the bridge, and then I'm going to give the first test through the amp in the other room. So I'm really pleased how it's turned out. So let me just finish off setting this up. I'm going to give it one last polish and one last wax with the strings off, and then I'm going to put a fresh set of strings on and go and test it. So let's see what it sounds like.